Welcome back to State and Local Government and Politics. Module 6, Legislatures. Part 3, Representation. A major role of a state legislator is to represent the needs and concerns of the people residing in her and his legislative district. Since each legislator is responsible to a relatively small number of constituents coming from a specific geographical area, they can address concerns that are not as apparent to statewide officials such as the governor or state attorney general. This attention to localized needs can lead to intense debate over conflicting values when, for example, representatives of rural conservative communities are forced to compromise with the interest represented by urban legislators representing liberal constituents. Legislators also represent the interests of their constituents beyond the formal lawmaking process. Legislators are often enlisted to make a phone call or write a letter on behalf of a citizen who needs help getting a personal issue addressed or expedited by the state bureaucracy. Research conducted by political scientists has shown that such constituency service pays significant dividends at re-election time, with voters looking favorably on helpful legislators by either volunteering for campaign work or contributing money to re-election campaigns. The process of representation works at two distinct levels. First, at an individual representative's level, there is a connection between the legislators and the districts from which they are elected. Second, as a unit, the legislature pursues policies that reflect the statewide interests and preferences of citizens. Another way to think about representation is in terms of the socio-demographic and gender composition of state and local legislative bodies. Many observers argue that legislative bodies should, to some significant extent, mirror the public they represent, in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, and such, to adequately represent the public at large. Some of the explanations given for the lower levels of women and minorities in state and local legislative bodies include cultural, institutional, and situational explanations. Cultural explanations would include state political culture, which would affect the attitude towards women and minorities in politics held by citizens and elites. For women, this political cultural aspect of their political environment can have three specific adverse consequences. First, they may not run for office because they do not believe it to be appropriate. Second, they may not be highly recruited to run for political office because party officials and other political elites are biased against female candidates. Third, even women who are not socialized into passive gender roles and who do run despite unsupportive elites face unsympathetic voters at the polls. Another explanation of the low levels of women and minorities in state and local legislatures concerns the institutional arrangements determining electoral success. For example, states with high levels of incumbents re-elected to office would allow for fewer seats being open to competition. States with multi-member districts versus states with single-member districts tend to have more racially, ethnically, and gender-wise legislatures. Those who favor legislative diversity have proposed a variety of electoral mechanisms to increase the number of women and racial minorities serving in state and local legislative bodies. Some have suggested the broadened adoption of term limits because the current re-election rate of incumbents is very high, while others have suggested the creation of majority Black or Latino districts by carefully drawing election district lines to favor minority districts. However, this latter approach to the promotion of diversity in legislative bodies was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court in Miller v. Johnson, 1995, and Shaw v. Hunt, 1996. In Part 4 of the module on legislatures, we'll discuss lawmaking.